You're listening to the OCD Stories podcast, hosted by me, Stuart Ralph. The OCD Stories is a podcast dedicated to raising awareness and understanding around obsessive compulsive symptoms. I do this through interviewing inspired therapists, psychologists, and people who have experienced OCD. Welcome to the OCD Stories. And welcome to episode 426 of the podcast. And in this one, I got on Josh, who has kindly agreed to share his story with us. And in particular, we discuss his early experiences of OCD, his various intrusive thoughts, including sexual intrusive thoughts, religious OCD, self-harm, joining the military, perfectionism, getting therapy, and much more. So it was a great chat with Josh. I had some technical difficulties at the start of the episode, which means I couldn't get my usual podcast mic equipment to work. So how you're hearing me now, I'll sound a little different during the interview. That's because I was using my laptop mic. So instead of cancelling it and rescheduling it, we went ahead and recorded it. So it's not too bad. It just won't sound as crystal clear as this on my end. So I just wanted to explain that in case you noticed the difference. And thank you to NoCD for supporting the podcast. NoCD offers effective and convenient therapy available in the US and outside the US. To find out more about NoCD, their therapy plans, if they currently take your insurance, or to download their free app, head to go.treatmyocd.com/the OCD stories, or the link will be in the episode description. Thank you to all of our patrons for supporting our work. To sign up to our Patreon and to check out the other benefits you'll receive as a patron, please see the link in the show notes. And of course, thank you to you guys as always for listening. It means a lot. And thank you to Josh for sharing his story. I appreciate it. Without further ado, here he is. Welcome to the podcast, Josh.
Hi, Stu. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's good to have you on. Obviously, we met through Patreon a few months ago now, I think. And yeah, it'd be great to hear your story. Obviously, I heard a little bit of it on our call, but it'd be good to hear it more in detail. So the floor is yours.
Thanks, Stu. Appreciate it. Um, yeah. So I guess I will, just start out here. So I think had OCD most of my life. Um, I think as far as back as I can remember, I do have a few key events that happened that I could be like, oh, that was definitely OCD. But I've always had, I've, al- as a kid, I've always like wanted to be really well behaved and like a really good kid. And one of the things that kind of stands out from my childhood is um, I promised my mom uh, one time she was upset because we were making her late for things, and she was like, "You boys, I have two other brothers and a sister, um, and this was before my sister was born, and my mom was like, "Oh, you boys need to get ready." You know, she had to be on time to work, and we were like little. We would run around and do, I don't know, whatever, make her late. And I promised my mom, I was like, Mom, I don't even know if I said this out loud, but in my head, maybe promised my mom, like, I'm going to be the first one ready every morning. And like, yeah, I'm not sure if she knew about this like expectation for myself, but yeah, I really committed to this, and my brothers caught on to this, and they were like, "Oh, you know what we're gonna do? We're gonna wake up super early and beat Josh into the bathroom. We're all gonna get ready first." And I was that when that happened, I was like freaking out, like no, and they would like close the door and like wouldn't let me in. They're like, "Ready." They thought it was pretty funny, but I don't know if that was OCD or not, but um, it could be. I think it was one of those things where it's like unrealistic expectations for yourself, stuff like that. It's like nobody required me to be the first one, you know. But yeah. Another thing I remember from my childhood is this is funny. It's like I was pretty young, and I remember telling my mom in the grocery store, like, "Mom, like you're spending too much money. Like you need to not spend so much money." And like I don't know why I was worried about that. Like it's so weird. Like It's such a weird thing to think about. It's like, as an adult, it's like that's such a weird thing to say. I don't know why my mom didn't kind of catch on to that being so weird, but um, she was just like, "Would you stop saying that?" And my brother was the opposite. My older brother, he would just like throw things into the cart as we were shopping. So he would grab like his favorite cereal, Reese's Puffs, and just like throw them in. Like, no, Joe, she's spending too much money. And so
Mm.
yeah, he cared a little bit less about that stuff. Um, and I remember Saturday mornings we would all like help my mom clean the house, and I would take a really long time on chores. Like I was a perfectionist, like vacuuming the floor, cleaning bathrooms, stuff like that. And you know how when you vacuum a floor, it's got those really nice lines,
Mm.
like if it's a rug. Um, we didn't really have that downstairs. It was like all hardwood. So we had a pretty nice house growing up, and like yeah, so there wasn't any like guidelines for me to follow. So I was like constantly trying to make sure I cover every square inch of the floor, and like I would like start in a corner and like follow, try to make imaginary lines. And yeah, so that was challenging. And then anytime I would clean, it would just take me forever. Doing dishes would take me a long time. Um, just a perfectionist in that regard. Another thing that stands out is sixth grade math class. This is like probably one of the most like I don't know like vivid memories of OCD is I was like in math class and had a feeling I had some like thoughts like really inappropriate thoughts, and I grew up in a like conservative Christian household, so I was told that God like knows your thoughts and he
Mm.
knows like your heart and everything that's going on, and he knows what you're thinking. And um, so I was like, oh no, like God knows what I'm thinking. I just thought some terrible things in school. This is like really inappropriate. So I like started kind of panicking, and then I got really pale and like felt like sick, I guess.
Mm.
And I was like, hey, like I need to go to the nurse's office. I'll let the teacher know. And when I got to the nurse's office, I called my mom and I was like, hey mom, could you come pick me up? And the nurse was like, he's not sick. Like he's fine, doesn't have a temperature or anything. And I was like, mom, could you just come pick me up? Like I need to get out of here. So she picked me up and took me home, and yeah, that was one of the, you know, kind of one of the many things I've noticed growing up where it's like, oh, that was definitely OCD.
Mm.
Um, yeah, like I said, I grew up in a really conservative Christian household, so like uh, there was lots of going to church, and like I just went to youth group and church, so it was like two times a week. Um, but in like OCD, as you know, it's like any situation that like that's important, that seems like, oh, like today you can't have any bad thoughts because it's Christmas or it's funeral or it's um, birthday, I don't know, something important. But like in church, and it's super taboo to have really weird thoughts. And in church I would like have inappropriate thoughts, like about, as old people were walking by with their walkers, like, oh, I hope you fall down, like all this stuff. And it's like, yeah. So just like, I was really concerned about that. And I was a teenager at the time we started going back to church. We took a little break there. But yeah, so like hormones and stuff were going on. So I would have like sexual intrusive thoughts about like doing sex acts to like Jesus and stuff like that, and
Mm.
all these weird um, thoughts. And so like I had this like need to, confess my sins, and I never really felt good enough. I never really had that feeling like I'm saved. Like I'm good. Like I would go to the altar and kneel down and cry and confess my sins, and they would be like, "What's wrong?" And I'm like, "I'm having terrible thoughts." And they're like, "Okay." Um, so that was just like was trying to search for that feeling of I love God. I'm you know I'm saved. Because I don't know if you know a lot about Protestantism, but um, there there's this, you need to like ask forgiveness for your sins, accept Jesus into your heart, and then you have your key for the gates of heaven. Like you can, yeah, you're good to go. So, but my church also talked about backsliding, which this is like kind of debated among church goers, whether someone can backslide or not. Um, so when you lose your salvation, um, and um, so that was like kind of taught where it's like, oh, you could lose your salvation, you could backslide, and then you need to get resaved. So I don't know. Christianity is this um, like institution for compulsions. It's like, oh, I don't feel saved anymore. I need to, get saved again, or need to ask for forgiveness. Um, I'm not really a churchgoer anymore. I'm not really a Christian. I'm agnostic. Um, um, it's kind of funny. My wife and I, we met on ChristianMingle.com. Um, and yeah, so it was definitely a thing, a big thing into my, early 20s where I was like, I need to be somewhat of a Christian. Um, but I'm no longer, 33 now. I'm no longer part of that. Most of it's logic, and part of it's like, hey, I want to accept uncertainty around like the afterlife and stuff like that.
Hmm.
Um, if you want to interrupt me anytime, feel free.
No,
Um,
yeah, I'll save my questions. I just want to give you, space to share.
okay. One thing that kind of happened around church and stuff like that is like I was told like, oh, because you're having all these thoughts, you know, the devil's attacking you.
Hmm.
Like that's what my mom would say as a teenager. She'd be like, "Oh, the devil's attacking you." I'm like, "Well, why? I don't want that to happen. Like, why is that happening? That sounds scary." And they would say like, "Oh, God must have big plans for you because the devil's just like really messing with you." And I'm like, "Oh, well, I didn't ask for this. I'm not like
Hmm.
praying to the devil or anything." So like that was pretty triggering, and I was just like, "Okay, what's the devil?" And okay, um, and like yeah, so it was just tough growing up OCD in conservative Christian household. It was yeah.
Yeah.
And my mom's like kind of it's like pull yourself up by your bootstraps kind of,
Hmm.
lady, or she's like, it's like she kind of admits that she has OCD, but she's like, I got over it. I don't know. Or like I still have it, but I just like ignore it, or I just like I don't know. She's just like, yeah, she acknowledges that she has it, but she just doesn't, I don't know. She
Hmm.
doesn't really understand why it's such a struggle and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Um, anyway, so I used to live in New Jersey growing up, grew up in South Jersey in the Bridgeton area, and um, we moved when I was 16 to Oregon. And I remember like during high school and stuff like that, I would have like magical thinking. Um, and I was always really worried about my brother passing like exams and like doing well in school.
Hmm.
And um, it was really hard for me to take tests because I would like sit there and then I like knew all the answers because like I don't know, like I guess I'm kind of smart, but uh, I would like know all the answers and I could answer the questions, but I physically couldn't like move forward and like circle the answer. Um, because I felt like I had this some sort of like magical advantage over others in the class. And I was always thinking like, well, what if they don't know this answer? Or if it was a hard question, I'd be like, oh, they're not going to get this answer right. Or I'd have like an intrusive thought like, oh, I hope they get this wrong or um, something like that. And yeah, it was, yeah. And with my brother, I had was in class with my brother a lot. So I'd always like worry about him, like, how's he doing? And I would like look over and I was like, oh, he looks like he's struggling over there. And like, yeah, so that's were tough because they're timed. Um, and that's a lot to go on in your brain when you're trying to take an exam. It's like yeah, I was always like the last one done. Stuff like that. And checking, I would always check answers, checking my answers and all that stuff. It was just kind of uh, yeah, just a disaster waiting to happen as far as test taking. It's just like I knew the answers or I had some confidence in the answers, and it was tough.
Mm.
Um, yeah, so we moved to Oregon when I was 16, like I was saying, and that was kind of in the middle of high school. I didn't really handle the change very well. OCD was still very strong. At one point between um, Oregon and New Jersey, I started like uh, kind of self-harm, uh, where I would have a thought and then I would feel this, I don't know, I'd have a thought and I would like punch myself in the side of the head, which I don't recommend. That hurts. I no longer do that. That was definitely a short lived thing, but um, definitely a strange thing that I don't really talk about very often because it's so weird. But um, yeah, it's like I don't know, it's getting frustrated with my brain and literally punching my head, which yeah, again, not a good idea. Um, yeah, high school was tough. Like I said, moved in the middle. Um, didn't have many friends. I kept telling my mom like I'm still having these weird thoughts. I don't know who I am. Like, how do you know who you are? And she'd be like, oh, well, you just figure it out. She's like, oh, I get it. She's like, I think she has OCD as well. My brothers all have OCD. And I'm the only one really seeking treatment and um, the only one that really knows like what to do. Well, yeah, only one that really knows what to do. Like I've shared with them kind of like, hey, you need ERP therapy and like don't give in to the compulsions and um, like the more you give in, the worse it gets. And but I don't know, we kind of grew up where it was like my mom literally said like, psychologists are crazier than you are. Like you don't need to go see a psychologist, it's a waste of time.
Yeah.
And we were always really discouraged from like medication. She would say, like, oh, you're just gonna be a zombie. Like, if you take that medication, you're just gonna be like, oh, I don't know what's going on. It's like that's really not the case.
Mm.
Like, currently, I take um, 80 milligrams of Prozac. I was taking 100, and I take a couple other meds. But yeah, it's yeah, it was tough to like get over that thinking from when I was a kid. But
Yeah.
during high school, um, I was not doing very well. At one point, I couldn't go to school. Well, I had trouble going to school. Like, I couldn't leave the house. Like, I would just pause and, like, I couldn't put my pants on. And I couldn't put my shirt on because, like, if I put my pants on, I'd have, like, this intrusive thought of, like, penetrating, like, my sister or, like, truly sexual acts or something weird. Like, all sorts of weird thoughts. Putting my belt on is very triggering. 'Cause, the belt's like a penis, and putting the belt in the belt loops, it's like, oh, that's, a vagina. And
Yeah.
um, so yeah. So stuff like that, where it just like really made me freeze up. And my brother got so frustrated because he didn't really struggle as much as I did. And he'd be like, stop, just, you know, being a brother and just saying, what are you doing? Like, hurry up. And get really frustrated with me. And
Mm.
um, not so much anymore. He's a lot more accepting. But like as a teenager,
Yeah.
it was tough for him. And he would leave me. He would take off in his '94 Mustang, and like so like we lived in a pretty rural area, so it took quite a while to get to school. Like I don't know, like 30 minutes, not really that long, but or actually 45 minutes. But we had to drive down like a mountainside and then get on the road, go down, and it was a pretty rural school in itself, but we were like outside of that area, so it was like even more rural.
Mm.
Um, so like he's like, hey, we need to go, and he would just like leave me. He's like, all right, I'm leaving. So he would just leave me. And like my mom would be like, you didn't go to school? And like I would be like, well, no, Jake left me. And poor Jake, like a couple times, my mom would be like, you gotta turn around and get your brother. Like you can't just leave him at home. So yeah, he did that, and I feel bad for him, but um, not too bad for him. Um, uh, yeah, so that was tough. Like I was obviously really struggling, especially my senior year. And like I was always a really good student, like I was saying, like I'm pretty smart, and I knew, like I don't know, I was always told I was smart, and like I just wasn't functioning in school. I wasn't able to like do assignments and stuff like that. And um, at the time, I didn't know what OCD was. I had no idea uh, like what was happening. Um, yeah, it was just tough. I thought thought it was me. I thought it was me the entire time. Like, oh, I'm just being dumb, or I'm just being, you know, I'm just not, you know, I don't know, I'm just being stubborn, or I'm just being weird. And so yeah, that gets tough, and you put yourself down like that. Um, but so while this is kind of important to mention, so while I was my senior year, I was taking an art class, and uh, there was an assignment where you had to, obviously draw things, and drawing like picture of something takes like a lot of concentration and kind of a lot of like forgiveness and like, kind of fluid thinking. And I couldn't really do that at that time because I was like struggling, like even writing things down. I would write something down and then I'd have an intrusive thought and have to erase it. And I would rewrite it and erase it and rewrite it until it felt till I didn't have an intrusive thought.
Mm.
So drawing, it's very tough when you have to uh, have fluid thinking and then also like draw lines and not erase them because if you keep erasing, it's going to look terrible.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I was really struggling, and my parents were like, "You're just being stubborn. Like you need to do your homework. You are going to." We had a camper on the property, and they were like, "You're going to stay in this camper until you get your homework done." And I literally spent, um, I think it was more than a week. I spent I spent a few nights definitely in the camper. Uh, yeah, I think it was like a week, maybe longer. But the camper was not regulated for heat. Like there was no heat in there.
Mm.
So like they would get very cold at like 3 o'clock in the morning, and I would just like lay on the mattress because like laying there and doing nothing was easier than like having the thoughts and like dealing with that and trying to draw and trying to do my homework. So like, yeah, totally failing art at this point. But yeah, stuck in this camper, and like my twin brother Jake, it's like, hey, just like do your homework so you can come inside. Like, what are you doing? And I was like, I can't. And like my parents would get frustrated, they'd yell at me, and they'd be like, what are you doing? Like, do your homework. And like I I was like I don't know, I can't. And then like it was kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy where it was like, uh, I'm just gonna fail, screw this. I can't like focus. Like I'm not like yeah. It's just like I'm not a good person. I'm not going to do well. Like screw this. I'm just gonna lay here and like yeah, like I said, I spent days in there and nights and um so yeah, not the best parenting tactic. I wouldn't ever do that to my kids, but um yeah, just eventually somehow I got through it. I don't think I ever finished drawing. But that's okay. Which is weird because I remember as a kid I would like to draw. I would like draw pictures of, Sonic the Hedgehog and Super Mario and I would like, you know, um I mean I was always a perfectionist, but I liked doing it. But yeah, it was weird. Just a weird thing from my childhood that from my, young adult years that yeah, that's a weird thing. Um, so after that, my mom was like, kind of fed up. My senior year, she's like, just graduate. I graduated somehow. Um, I'm still not getting any help at this point. Uh, yeah. So my parents were like, my brother, he was done with high school. He decided to graduate early. He graduated in March, and was like, "Hey, I'm getting out of this school. I'm gonna go join the military." So he joined the Air Force, and he was out of there. He started basic in March. You typically graduate in like June. He got out of there in March and started basic training and would write us letters and stuff like that. And we both before he joined, like we both went and signed up, and because I was like, I don't really know what I'm going to do with my life. I guess I'll join the military. I don't really know. Uh, like I was functioning a little better at that time, but um, still just really struggling, uh, and with my OCD, and my parents were like, you need to join the military and like get out of here, and like, um, yeah. So I did, and my mom dropped me off, and I went to basic, and that was a really tough time. Because in the military, you have to get dressed very rapidly in basic training, and getting dressed was tough for me because I didn't put pants on at one point. So like putting pants on and getting dressed was like very like it's very tough. It's a very sweaty process as well because you would like get out of the shower and then you'd be getting yelled at, and then you're all sweaty again. But yeah, so it was tough.
Mm.
It was pretty brutal. And I had a lot of derealization while I was in because, things are so weird. Like, it feels like prison kind of when you're in basic where you're getting yelled at and you go and you eat your meal and you just get yelled at some more. And you go back to the barracks and you're getting yelled at again and you're doing push-ups and all this stuff. And um, I was very kind of out of it for most of it because of the derealization. So I was like a target for the training instructors to kind of like say, "Hey, this guy's like messing up." He would like yell at him more, so they would yell at me more and like get in my face and like. But I was determined to make it through. Like I didn't want to let my parents down. Um, but I did fail. I think a portion of the PT test. I couldn't do all the sit-ups. What I was doing is I was doing a full sit-up while everyone else was doing crunches, and yeah, that's kind of why I think I failed that portion. But yeah, so spent an extra month in basic training. It was fun, and made it through finally. And yeah, I didn't graduate on time, so basically I got washed back. Um, so my graduation that was supposed to happen. Um, my brother came for. I got to visit with him a little bit, but I still had like training to do, so had to go back and finish up. Um, but yeah, I got through that. Then I went to tech school, and I failed out of tech school. Um, it was just a 5 week tech school. Failed out of that, and the coursework was basically going through paperwork um, about regulations for active duty members and their benefits. And I literally had to control F and like find certain things and fill in the answers for, it was basically like processing um, folks as they entered bases and, helping them get set up with their security cards and their family member security cards and all that stuff. How, not their housing, but some of the benefits that are there. I failed out of that and then missed my flight. It's my next tech school because they were like, "Hey, you're going to retrain. You're going to go to a different tech school." And I was like, "Okay, cool." And I missed my flight. And tech school is kind of like um, it's kind of like basic training, but it's a lot less harsh. You still have to like march around um, and like you know um, I don't know, do all the military stuff, but it's you have a lot more freedom, and you get more freedom as you progress. Like your first week, you can't leave base, or your first couple weeks, you can't leave base. You can't wear civilian clothes. You have to always be in military outfit. And then like as you progress, you can wear civilian clothes, and you can like eventually go off base and like all this stuff. And yeah, so anyway, tech school, I missed my flight, my next tech school, and got remedial training for that. So basically, I was, trying to leave, trying to be on time for my flight, and um, felt very perfectionisty about like my uniform. So that took a while, and like I was really like anxious about leaving, and like just having lots of OCD, lots of intrusive thoughts. So missed my flight, got remedial training. That sucked. Um, so I made it to my next tech school in Texas, and I still had OCD very much. And so, and I did pretty well in this tech school, um, and I made it through. I was always like late to class and stuff like that, but made it through somehow. And then I got stationed at my first duty station, um, and while working there, uh, I I would struggle with like showing up to work on time. Like I would um, be stuck in my room trying to put my pants on, like trying to put my belt on, um, doing all these compulsions to like neutralize these thoughts. And like, yeah, you can't really
Mm.
show up late in the military. It's kind of frowned upon. Um, so yeah, they eventually were like, hey, you need to like not do that. And then I got paperwork and more paperwork, and they were like reprimanding me and like saying, don't do that. And then eventually they were like, you have a new requirement. You're going to be 15 minutes early to work every day. And like that was like my on time would be 15 minutes early. And like I don't think I think I met that for like the first couple months, but then I started slipping and like showing up like 10 minutes early. Um, but eventually I think I got like an Article 15 when they were like, they read me my Miranda rights, took me into the aisle, read me my Miranda rights, and like, you have the right to remain silent, all this stuff. And like, it's non-judicial punishment where it's like, I didn't get court-martialed or anything, but it was like, hey, like, this is serious. Don't do this. And yeah, it was just tough. Um, then sometime during my enlistment, I got deployed to Afghanistan um, and spent 6 months there. I actually got more confident about things over there, just because it was a new crew and like um, I didn't have this like track record of like showing up late and like messing up. And
Mm.
so kind of a fresh start. Um, so that was nice. And then I got back and it was kind of back to, you know, oh, you're a dirtbag. Like, but they were like a little bit, they respected me a little bit more because I got deployed and I did well. And um, so that was good. But it was just tough. Military was really tough. Definitely didn't didn't bring me up as much as it put me down, but um, what it did do was start me in therapy. So my supervisor at the time, I my job was to like set up um, freight to move aircraft parts
Mm.
across the country and ship them all over the place. And I would have to call trucks and I would have to get like bids for moving cargo. I'm like, oh, um, try to find the cheapest bid that will do the work because it's the government. And yeah. So I was trying to call them and I was, you know, hitting numbers on the phone, but like I like got to a point where I like couldn't dial because like I was having these thoughts like I don't know. I don't even remember what kind of thoughts I was having, but I like couldn't move forward. I was stuck. And like my supervisor was like watching me and she's like she wasn't really saying much, but like I could tell she was watching me and I was like I couldn't move forward and like I was just stuck there and then like I knew she was watching me, so then I was like, oh no, like I'm gonna fail. And then it was like this self-fulfilling prophecy where it's like
Mm.
I'm failing. Like um so I was really stuck. And then yeah, she basically pulled my boss into the office and was like, hey, Josh needs to go to mental health. Like he's not doing well. Uh, by that time, I've already gotten paperwork and all this stuff. Like they were like, yeah, I need to go to mental health. So I went to mental health and they were like, yeah, I think you have OCD. And they started like doing talk therapy and stuff like that and gave me a very low dose of Zoloft. And it was not very good therapy. They were basically like, well, have you tried like not to have thoughts? And I was like, yeah. uh, Uh, yeah, so it wasn't very good therapy. And eventually, unfortunately, I felt guilty for going to mental health because you'd have to go during your workday. And I felt guilty because my coworkers would be, sweating, working their butts off. And I'm over there like having a vacation in mental health, um, talking to some guy. And it's like, yeah, I just felt guilty. So I stopped going, stopped taking my medication. And yeah, and then I met my wife, and yeah. So while I was in the military, I met my lovely wife, Mallory, and she was definitely a game changer um, in my OCD life. She decided to, um, she basically encouraged me to go to college and get out of the military, and was like, "Hey, uh, you can do anything you want." Like, and so when she graduated college, uh, then I went to college and used my GI Bill, got out of the military, and um, yeah, uh, it was really great. She like changed my life. And then we ran into some struggles while I was going to college, where major issues where I like was doing the same things. Wouldn't be able to do my homework, wouldn't be able to write, pausing. Uh, she would basically make me food, and I would be doing homework until like really odd hours of the night, and I wouldn't be very responsive. I would just eat my food and be like, yeah, just she was she was not very happy at the moment. Our marriage wasn't doing very well, and yeah, it wasn't a good time. And then um, I um, started YouTubing things. I YouTubed like Mark Freeman, and he started talking about like, hey, like don't judge your thoughts. Like everyone has intrusive thoughts and all this stuff. And when I started listening to the podcast, the OCD Stories podcast. I think it started in 2014 or 15. I'm not sure when the podcast started, but I think it was 2015.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, it was kind of cool just listening and hearing all these people talk. Um, you know, um, it was great, changed my life. So thanks for having the podcast, dude.
My pleasure. Thank you. So, yeah, sorry, were you going to say more?
Nope.
Okay. And did you eventually get sort of ERP therapy?
Yeah, I meant to cover that. So yeah, I got ERP therapy. My wife was like, "Here," she basically took over the group project, is what we say, and it's like, "Hey, you're gonna get therapy," and I found this therapist, and you're going to therapy, and basically drove me there and was like, "Here you go." And so yeah, I started getting ERP therapy, and working on doing exposures and stuff like that. And yeah, I've been doing ERP for like 7 years now,
Uh,
8 years. Um, but I'm kind of uh, progressing slowly in that. So um, yeah, that's where I'm at.
nice. Well, thank you for sharing. Um, and yeah, it was interesting. Well, yeah, it was really good to hear the sort of backstory about how it sort of developed and changed over time and maybe went unnoticed. And certainly you definitely had a tough time in childhood and teenage years and then obviously in the military. Um, and it was great that they recognized it was OCD. It was just a shame they didn't then know what to do about it. But and yeah, obviously I didn't realize how much you'd struggled during your military years. And that must the fact that you stuck with it is really incredible, the perseverance, because
Yeah,
yeah, it must have been really hard. Um, but I think, what you said about your mum's belief systems around psychologists and medication and that she's not entirely wrong, right? Most therapists and psychologists are a bit nutty, and I count myself in that. Um, but because we're all human and all humans are a bit crazy at times. We all have our
right.
issues. So your mum's not entirely wrong. But I guess the difference is a therapist, a psychologist, they have the tools to deal with that. Um, but what was it like for you, maybe going against that programming, like that belief system and trying to get help yourself?
Um, yeah, it was kind of strange at first, especially with the medication piece. I didn't want to take medication. I was very hesitant. Um, but yeah, just after doing my own research and listening to the podcast, I was like, you know, and my wife like basically encouraging me, like, you can do whatever you want. Like, um, you don't have to stay in the military because that was kind of the plan, I guess. I don't really know what the plan was.
Yeah,
But yeah, it was just, you know, she changed my life. And then listening to the podcast and um, yeah, just pretty easy to just be like, hey, like, I need therapy. So,
yeah, yeah. Okay, cool. And how are you doing now by comparison to say 2015?
doing pretty good. It's been a roller coaster, kind of like um, OCD is so sneaky with its compulsions, its mental compulsions and stuff like that, where I didn't realize, well, I kind of knew I was doing compulsions, but I would like be like feeling searching where I would have an intrusive thought and then I would be like, uh, um, I'd be like, oh, that's interesting. And I would like try to be mindful about it and be like, oh, yeah, that's an interesting thought. And um, I would kind of keep saying, oh, that's interesting until I got like a certain feeling, like I was like feeling searching. And so like trying to do the right thing, but still doing compulsions by like searching for feelings and trying to feel a certain way and um, still neutralizing. So it's been neat to kind of figure that out. But yeah, still OCD is such a pain in the butt.
Yeah,
Um, right now I'm doing no CD. therapy with a therapist, and it's going great. Um, yeah, just for myself, like sticking, like I would always do in vivo exposures, like in the moment. Like if I had a weird thought, I would like, point my fingers at my wife and like do magical thinking exposure where I'd be like, I hope you fall off your horse and I hope you, fall down the stairs and like all
Mm.
this stuff and stuff like that. And, um, I'll like purposely think things on purpose that were terrible, like, oh, I want to have sex with my mom and my sister and everybody else. And, but I was still kind of doing some compulsions here and there. So OCD crept back in and it's still kind of there. And I'm just working on trying not to neutralize. But yeah, it's still a work in progress. And I kind of had this weird thought, like with podcasts, like I had to have all my ducks in a row to be on the podcast. And I don't know why I had that thought, but I was like, I'm not like ready. And it's just like, I'm just gonna do it because like OCD is a journey and like
Yeah.
people need to know like it's a roller coaster, like up and down and all around and stuff. So
Yeah. Yeah, no, I completely agree. And in terms of, obviously, I know what you do now for work. You don't have to share it if you don't want, but I'm just curious how you're doing now at work by comparison to your past job in the military. Is
yeah,
it
I'm doing
smoother
a lot
now?
better.
Or, yeah,
I'm doing a lot better. Confidence is still an issue for me. And working in a cubicle gives you space to do compulsions because there's like walls around you.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, I'm doing pretty good.
Okay, good. Um, so was there on your sort of recovery journey, has there been like an epiphany moment, light bulb moment where something just clicked around
Yeah.
treatment or the way you view OCD?
Yeah. A few aha moments I kind of wrote down. So I have a few workbooks here. The mindfulness workbook for OCD, um, Get Out of Your Mind and Into Your Life by Stephen Hayes. I'm not reading another book by John Hirschfield, uh, Mindfulness for OCD or something like that.
Oh, with Charlotte,
Um,
obviously. Yeah.
yes. So a couple of things that kind of were light bulb moments for me. Just in the mindfulness workbook for OCD by John Hirschfield, he says, there's the brain, the mind, and you. And just kind of distinguishing between that. It's like, oh, like my brain is like this processor and my mind is like this weird place. And I'm separate from that. Like just kind of distinguishing those three. Um, and realizing like, hey, like your mind is a real messed up place, and that's okay. Like you make your decisions. You have different values than what's going on in your mind. Uh, so that was really freeing. Um, and yeah, there's Mark Freeman again, like judging, labeling thoughts. Like
Hmm.
the moment you label a thought, you're doing a compulsion. Like don't do that. Uh, don't judge your thoughts.
Yeah.
Chrissy Hodges talking about violent sexual taboo thoughts. Just her sharing things, and I think people just like sharing their weird, really weird, intrusive thoughts. Like sometimes I think about having sex with my dog. Sometimes I think about having sex with my mom, my sister, my mother-in-law. Sometimes I think about like stomping on my dog's rib cage. Like we have really weird thoughts, and that's okay. Our minds are weird, messed up places, and that's just the human experience. Um, Dr. Stephen Phillipson, huge help. Showing thoughts of relevance is like really big for me right now, and like has been, but that's like key. Like just being like, oh, thanks for sharing, or he mentions the word ishkadiddy,
Yeah.
um, you know, um, and just knowing between the stimulus and the response that you have a choice to do the compulsion or not, and that was so big because it's like, all right, like between those areas, it's like you have a choice. And then, of course, Shala nicely. with her views on self-compassion was very helpful and just helped me to stop beating myself up all the time. So,
Yeah, really good list of ideas there. Um, yeah, and words of hope for people listening. What would you tell them?
um, yeah, things will get better. Keep doing exposures, do them every day. Don't be like me. Don't just do in vivo exposures. Do exposures when you're not anxious as well,
Mm.
so that you can build that confidence and you can just say, laugh in the face of OCD and be like, okay, that was dumb. Like, what else you got? So,
Yeah,
yeah.
nice. Yeah, I like that. And then no, you've got a billboard where you live. What do you want written on that billboard?
Uh, let's see. Probably just you are not your thoughts. Um, just kind of distinguishing between the brain, the mind, and you kind of thing, where it's like you are not your thoughts. And maybe something like, um, I don't know, something that kind of illustrates your brain is a messed up place, and that's okay. Like everybody has really strange, weird thoughts, and you're not alone.
Yeah, yeah, I like that. And then you can pick up I'll say the 20-year-old you, but let's do it whatever age you were when you were in that caravan.
Caravan?
Yeah. The caravan, was it caravan in the garden where you couldn't do the artwork? Uh,
Oh, oh yes, like a trailer. Yeah,
Trailer. Sorry, we call it caravan.
that, that's all right. Uh, yeah. Um, I would say like it's not you. Like you can do this. Uh, don't beat yourself up. Um, high school really doesn't matter that much anyway. Yeah. I would just tell myself like, hey, maybe you need ERP. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, just mostly just self-compassion stuff where I would be like, hey, like it's not you. Like it's your brain and your brain's messed up and everyone's brain is kind of messed up and that's okay.
Yeah, good words. Um, and then lastly, anything else you wish you could have said or shared today?
Um, yeah, one key thing that I like an aha moment I had was, hey, if it's kind of scary, it's like, hey, you are not your thoughts, but also like you like when people say, hey, it's not me, it's my OCD.
Mm,
It's true, but and on the podcast one time you guys were talking and we're like, it's not you, it is your OCD, but also you did have that thought. Like that still is a thought you had. Like
mm,
it's it's still you, like your brain is just this really weird place. And like I think coming to that acceptance where it's like I think about weird shit. Like
yeah,
and that's okay.
yeah,
Like and everyone does. And because I have OCD, I I tend to focus on my thoughts and obsess over things and rethink about things and rethink about really strange, messed up stuff. And, that's okay. I think that's like one of the big messages. It's like, you do have OCD, but you also have a brain and like brains are really weird.
yeah, yeah, they are indeed. Yeah, that's a good way of looking at it. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Josh, sharing your story. It was great to hear it in more detail, and I'm sure many people listening will be helped by it. So thank you.
Yep. Thanks, Stu.
Thank you for listening to this week's podcast. And thank you to our Patreons who helped make this episode possible. And if you would like to find out more about Patreon and the rewards and benefits, then there will be a link in the episode description. If you enjoy the OCD Stories podcast and would like to support us, please subscribe and rate the show wherever you listen to the podcast. And thank you to NoCD for supporting our work. If you want to find out more about NoCD, head to go.treatmyocd.com/the OCD Stories or click the link in the episode description. And quick disclaimer, guys, this podcast is not therapy. It is not a replacement for therapy. Please seek treatment from a trained professional. And until we speak, take care.